you mentioned Peak Games. What happened after Peak Games?
Let me go back to my Turkish history.
Yeah.
So I don't know all the details, but I remember Peak got acquired. At least their card gaming division got acquired, and they built their other game, which is a massive success. And then a lot of employees, I mean, they grew, had a lot of people, educated them. A lot of those guys ended up starting their own studios, building out talent. It was kind of the spark that started the gaming fire, if you will, in the region. And I always believe you need that. I mean, we had that here in Dubai, in the UAE, with Uber's acquisition of Careem.
Yeah.
Right?
But not in gaming.
Not a gaming company, right? Outside of gaming. And you see that spurred a lot of founders, a lot of different companies that brought in a lot of VCs. A lot of those, I know them, some of them personally, started VCs or started working at prominent VCs here. Again, not gaming, but you need that catalyst to help grow local ecosystem.
Which is a publisher.
The good thing is, I know you mentioned publishers, but the truth is a lot of gaming companies don't need publishers to grow. It depends on what you're doing, right? So
I mean, you can self-publish.
You can self-publish.
That's the point.
You can self-publish or get your own funding, or heck, you could get lucky where a game it just bootstraps itself to the millions. But you're absolutely right. So that catalyst is what we're missing. I think we need a little bit more of those, and then to accelerate this catalyst, we need either VCs to take more risks. All right, guys, if part of your mandate is invest locally, you want to go into gaming, you want to be in the early ones, just be willing to take a bit more risk and just invest in the talent here. Other thing is government support, right? Grow this out. But I agree with you 100%. The thing that's interesting is you can have a company here and still fundraise internationally. Like nothing stops you from doing that.
Yeah, but having access to these, to the VCs or to like publishers, you have access to them. But VCs in general, they tend to invest more locally. I mean, not everyone.
In the ecosystem they're familiar with.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yep. So when you go and tell them, hey, we're this company out of the UAE, they're like, okay, cool. It's a bit more difficult of a sell.
Now we're getting some attention in the region. So maybe in the near future, we would be able to actually raise from, people raised from international VCs, but this could be, could become better.
Yep.
But to go back on the catalyst, I know I asked the question before, but to get that catalyst, and we're not looking for shortcuts, what do you think should we be doing here in the region in order to achieve like a catalyst that can actually pop up many companies like Rollic did actually in Turkey?
Yeah.
And if you go back to Finland, for example, if we're talking about Finland, you can go back to Angry Birds, to Supercell, and to these companies. So what does it take? Or what do we need today? How can we get there in like 2 years, in like 3 years maybe? We have many companies here, and these companies they've actually like today we have some experience. At least like we have 8, 9 years, 10 years of experience. Some have more. This is enough in terms of experience to do something different. What do you think should be done in the next, like, let's say, a couple of years?
So first, I need to mention there are some very strong programs here. So, for example, AD Gaming is thinking on that level that I mentioned earlier. So they have an amazing gaming program for companies to set up here, and they support them with subsidies, amazing facilities, and those are like kind of like the direct benefits, and some of the indirect benefits is the ecosystem building. So a lot of these events that started appearing here, one could argue they're connected by AD Gaming's marketing and really trying to set itself, Abu Dhabi as a leader in gaming in the region. And of course, because of those efforts, Dubai is now closely monitoring and also going to be setting up as well, try their own programs. So one thing's into another. It's kind of like a domino effect, but someone had to take the lead. And this is kind of going back to that catalyst, like someone has to push that first domino and everyone will follow. So, and I think companies can do the same thing. So I have a bit of a bias of really wanting YallaPlay to be gaming unicorn in the region, right? And maybe I have a personal agenda, right? Because I was born and raised here, even though I spent most of my life in the US. So I kind of have that. So I fit in that category of, okay, I'm very focused on creating value for shareholders. Definitely want to find the best solution to increase this value. But at the back of my mind, I also want to support the region as much as we can. And this is why when we're hiring, we're okay to take on some juniors. We're okay to be training people. We're okay doing these things because it fits in our mandate as a company. And not every mandate has to be, value, financial, Wall Street driven. So, so I think if more companies do what we're doing, small companies, medium-sized companies, larger companies, and if everyone just start thinking of, hey, I'm not just here to grow my company, and if you will, just really be dependent on government support, but I'm actually really here to support the ecosystem as well, and we all collectively support each other in that regards. Because we're not really competing. I think the collective together we can create something. I really do, because we have that benefit of, I call it the minority benefits, right? So we want to stick together, we want to do something together, and let's say company A is working on a product, company B works on a product, company A doesn't work out, guess what? And company B is successful,
can hire
the A,
exactly.
Right? Come together, guys, let's do this. And I see this happening. I mean, most of our hires are from other companies, most of our hires are from abroad, but I think it's that, sticking together and just realizing that our mission is to grow our companies, but we should also support each other and just growing this ecosystem. And we have to admit, we all have a personal bias for being here as well, right? At the end of the day, as a founder and CEO of a company, I mean, part of your decision-making of where you want to settle is, where it makes more sense for the business, but also there's a personal reason of why you live where you live, right? Otherwise, all of us would live in Eastern Europe and build games there, right? So that's something to keep in mind. And I think that's a benefit that sometimes founders underestimate the power of the collective.
Now we have lots of attention on the region, especially you mentioned AD Gaming and the Dubai program, and now we have also programs in Saudi Arabia. Also, Jordan had a couple of, actually more than one success. What would you say to those companies, those publishers, those VCs that are watching us from abroad? Where do we stand today as a region? And like for them, if they're interested to come here, they like that, they want some insights. Where do we stand in terms of as an ecosystem today? And where would you like position us?
Region compared to the world, or UAE come within the region?
I think the region as a whole, because we have many countries actually working on different programs, and we've had successes before. We had acquisitions as well, but for some reason they were not catalysts. So where do we stand?
Listen, I think it's not really about where we stand. I mean, it depends on which metric you're looking at, right?
I mean, for
like number of successful companies, still not the top of the list, right? I mean, so in terms of companies, I wouldn't think so. In terms of investments happening, so it depends on which KPI we're looking at for me to build this leaderboard, if you will.
I think people abroad are interested in investment.
So in that context, there is a golden opportunity of investing here, because you're kind of just in any classic investment, you're buying in low, right?
Yeah.
So your upside, maybe your beta, your risk is a bit higher, but you're still buying in low when you come here. And by doing this, if you hit the right investments, then you can really make gains. That's one aspect of it. But the second aspect, and more concrete sort of points, is that the consumers here spend a lot per capita on gaming. If you think about like Saudi, GCC countries,
definitely,
actually a lot more than other like tier 1 countries, US or whatnot. So that's another opportunity to actually create. I'm talking about creating games.
And CPMs are cheaper.
Yes.
Yeah.
Right. For the local market. There's that argument. One could argue the market size is a bit smaller, but the spending, the ARPU, average revenue per user, is a lot higher here than abroad. So there's that other angle to it. But then last but not least, there is the, less competition between the studios here, that golden opportunity. So, and again, a lot of VCs, I don't work for a VC myself, but a lot of VCs are interested only in international plays. So a lot of VCs I spoke to from New York saying, we want to invest in the region. And they have the reasons for that, some opportunities here. So I think it's, at the end of the day, very interesting for a VC from abroad to come here. Even more interesting for a local VC to invest in gaming.
Definitely.
And catch it very, very early. And I mean, most important for a local VC as well is like, we're going to be speaking their same language, right? Same language, same culture. If that's something they care about. But I think there's some, profound benefits of having that as well.
Well, you mentioned local players and the ARPUs are higher than the rest of the world. We've seen, like, for example, Jordan is a place where the studios are mostly focused on local players.
Yeah.
We've seen some acquisitions happening there. We've seen some successes, but if you take a look at the market today, it feels a bit stagnant in terms of growth, in terms of of player user base growth, in terms of other games actually penetrating the market. So, for example, if who doesn't play Call of Duty, for example?
Yeah.
Why would I recreate something localized? Do you think there's still value in investing in games that are not hyper localized, but I mean catered for the region?
So the short answer, I have my personal opinion on this.
Okay.
So some of the success that happened recently were just due to blue ocean effect, right? So Jawaker, very, very successful, but they had zero competition. They're out there building every single local card game possible or board game possible. So they commanded the entire.
We have some card games. What Jawaker did is actually package them
together
in one game. Yeah.
But that's an example of they're not really competing on a global. It's not Call of Duty. They're not competing on a global scale. It's just a very hyper.
Candy Crush.
Yep. So Candy Crush. So I personally don't believe, unless you're really targeting a very cultural local game, I don't believe in the model of building just for the region.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. I mean, the region is too small.
I'm happy we agree on that.
Yeah. And I think most people do agree on this. Now, I understand that as a smaller studio, right? If you're not trying to build the next Call of Duty, Saudi is a huge market, and you can build a formidable business building a game for the region. And it probably makes sense if I'm a smaller studio and I'm trying to create a 6-digit valuation company.
Could be a stepping stone for you to
or 7 digits, a small success story that it makes total sense. That's my first go-to, right? So in that context, I think it's completely fine. So I'm building this game. I want to have, 200,000 users maximum.
Yeah.
I'm going to make some revenue, sustain a studio. I'm happy with it. It's my first entry to the market, and that's fine. But when you're a massive entity and you're trying to build the next global hit, it's not going to work. So it depends on, what your goals are. And I can argue that building a local game is a way easier operation and a way lower risk, even though the upside is completely capped, than trying to go after the next, world hit wonder.
Way more risk?
Locally? No, less risk.
Yeah.
Sorry.
Yeah.
A lot less risk, right?
Definitely.
But obviously a lower upside as well. Are you thinking of building a local game?
Not really, but because I've heard of programs that are actually focused on building local games.
Tornee was a local game. And for us, we specifically built it as an MVP for our engine. And it exploded.
Yeah.
Built a good product. There was nothing else like it. And it just grew. And for us, acquiring...
Tornee was a card game at the end of the day.
It was a card game.
Yeah.
So that's a very local... We didn't invent something new. So it's a card game. It's for the region. Heck, it was in Arabic. So...
Let us not consider card games.
Mm-hmm.
The other types of games, how would you localize them other than the art and some trans localization, whatever? But this is what I feel that people are getting it wrong, in my opinion, because I've heard a lot of studios, a lot of initiatives that are trying to invest in studios that are building local games, and this is something that I always try to talk to them and tell them, guys, it's not about this. I've had discussions before, and one of my guests' opinions that you'll listen to in next episodes, he says that in his opinion, the only market that is worth localizing for is China, because it operates in a different way.
I can already guess the guest.
Yeah. But for us as an Arab, as a MENA region in general, you can adopt any game. You rarely find a game that is focused on a certain market or on a certain region. You might find them, but as you said, they're for the early stage companies. And then if you want to grow your company, you have to target globally. Why are we still focusing on local games in the region? And this is only my question, not to you, but I'm wondering myself.
Yeah, I'm on your side on this one. It really depends on your agenda here. There's a market locally, obviously, but in my opinion, the upside is always going to be capped. But one can argue it's way easier to market locally. I remember when we had 500,000 fans on Tarnib, and it was all organic. I was just like, I'm like, wow, this is super simple. We had a cool game, a couple of people talk about it, it just spreads. I find it hard to get that level of success.
Definitely.
Unless you have like a super interesting one-hit wonder, especially today. Right? I mean, there's like billions of games on the App Store. So I agree with you. But again, remember, I think it's good to put in context, who you were talking to. A smaller studio, honestly, I would advise, hey, start locally, build something. But you asked something earlier, which is the thing about building local games is actually a bit tricky. Most of the local games end up looking like Aladdin for some reason. It's called like the Aladdin effect. It's like, okay, how do we make this super cliche? Make everyone wear like how to make it like super Middle Eastern. And I'm like, why? I don't think that's what people do, right? So I have to admit, it's a cultural thing. It's a bit difficult sometimes. But if you nail it just right, your market is limited.
It's a marketing gimmick.
It is. It is. Yeah. It's a marketing gimmick. Again, I met a few very talented studios when on my trip to Saudi. And I'm not going to lie, they built some really cool local games. I'm having a different
I've seen
fun. There's a game called Ozuma.
Yeah.
So the idea is so cute. I'm like, wow, this is hilarious. Like, you're this guy who gets invited to his family house. You don't want to be there. So you're trying to avoid all your aunts and uncles because, when you get invited to these massive family gatherings, you don't want to like small talk with everyone there. So your mission is like to avoid the family. So it's a cool story. And I feel like other cultures may not be able to. Maybe some cultures, resonate with this, but I'm like, this is hilarious. And all the cliches, all the jokes, all things in the game, and the grandpa comes up, he lost his glasses and now you have to avoid him like the plague. So it's hilarious. And I feel like this is fun. I would tell my friends about it. So I see value in that. But then, how much money are you going to really make from a game like that? How much is going to scale? But would I advise a small studio to go pursue this? I'm like, heck yeah, it's your first game, go after it. It's cool. Heck, I want to play it. So
yeah. It was actually a fun game. You mentioned that the market is hyper competitive today. You have thousands of games uploaded every day to the market, to the stores. I mean, we're talking about mobile here. If we have like new studios watching us today or new entrepreneurs that want to get into gaming, what would you advise them to do? Where would you advise them to focus? What would you advise them to focus on? Apart from actually the localized games, which is a smart way to get into the market.
Okay, great question. So I have two answers. One is the VC business hat, the financial answer, and then one is is like my personal answer, the Kareem answer, if you will. See, gaming is an interesting industry because it's very passion driven. Most of the developers, at least what I learned from experience, most of the developers, artists, are actually passionate about the game they're building. So even if Merge 3 Puzzle is like the most, it's what's in trend these days, it's the most profitable genre, etc., I wouldn't advise you go do that if you're not passionate about it. Because at the end of the day, gaming is so difficult. What really keeps you going is, hey, I'm building a cool project, I want to see it through. So I feel like that's an important core thing that has to be met. If the founders, if the developers, if the directors are not excited about the project, they're not going to pursue it. So that's like the first thing. Hey, what are you passionate about? And then, within limits, like you have to be hopefully passionate about something that has a road to generating building a business about it. So like you can't be passionate about Flappy Birds and then go build something. So first person shooter, RPG, multiplayer, whatever you want to do, right? So you start there, a specific creative direction, storyline. So I feel like this is we should give some weight, right? Some coefficient.
Yeah, exactly.
To that, right? Because you don't have that, your company will just die, at the first difficulty. So I think that's the first thing. Figure out these young entrepreneurs, what drives them, what fuels them. And then you guide them in how to achieve that in the, with the correct business sense. So cool, they're passionate about this type of game. All right. How do you monetize it? How do you build your business case? How do you add all the things around it to turn it into a business? But at its core, they're still passionate about the fundamental, idea of the game.
But where would you draw the line?
In terms of?
I mean, people say never fall in love with your product, never fall in love with your game. If you're passionate about what you do about your game, where would you draw the line and decide like this is not working?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's a bit it's a bit on the edge.
And this is why I feel another interesting thing in gaming is that having a good team is super important. Because you're gonna have always, some people are like the emotional thinkers, like they're the dreamers, they're the ones who want to build this crazy game. And then you have other people on the team who complement that skill by being the more rational thinkers. All right, cool. Can we make money from this idea or not? We can't keep blowing runway. So there has to be a lot of, and this is where I said you have to support these younger entrepreneurs with a common business sense and, good practices in terms of building businesses. So here's your runway, here's your market size, here's our estimated cost acquisition, like all these boring metrics, just to make sure that whatever they're building has a chance of fruition.
Yeah.
So you're right that I think that piece is what comes from experience. That's the thing that we have to import from abroad, right? That's where you get the 15, 20-year-old experience, veterans, supporting these super passionate younger entrepreneurs. And maybe this circles back, 360, what you mentioned earlier, which is, what's some ideas to spearhead the growth in this region? I feel like there has to be a level of importing experience. I mean, you can either wait 20 years.
There should be a balance between, in terms of experience.
Exactly.
Cool.
So bring in some, that's fine. I mean,
yeah, sure.
That happens all the time.
Sure.
Region. You bring in experts, help them support local ecosystem. One day they graduate, they're able to build things themselves, but do this super fast. So you don't have to wait the full period.
Cool. For those who are experienced, no, not actually for them. It's actually a genuine question. Where do you see us moving as an industry, specifically in mobile, since you operate in mobile? We've seen how the market has been acting crazy lately. Where do you see us moving forward as mobile game developers, as studios in the mobile space?
In the region?
Not necessarily, like in mobile in general.
More general? That's a good question. I was in a think tank room one time with several founders, CEOs of companies, and that was a specific question. Where do you see us in 10 years and in 5 years?
The typical HR question.
Yeah. So I have my thoughts. I can answer the 10-year one first. I feel that the app stores are losing, they won't exist in 10 years, right? Because the value they bring to the table has diminished to almost nothing. There was a day where I would put my game on the app store, and I would get organic traffic, I'll get listed, I'll get users. I mean, that's the value I'm getting. Today, I'm getting none of this.
It's a marketplace today.
It's not even a marketplace. It's like this competitive, it's not, I don't know what it is. It's just a place that you put your app out there. Yeah. And then you're paying 30% of your revenues to Apple and Google. And I'm wondering, okay, great, but what are you actually bringing? Now, I understand they own the hardware at some level, at least in Apple's case. But quickly, a lot of companies, with Epic and whatnot, so a lot of companies are starting to realize we're not getting 30% of our revenue value back from the app stores. So 10 years, I don't think app stores will exist as they were. It might be a little bit more decentralized. I think web, very fast, is growing.
Again.
Yes.
Definitely.
So I think HTML5 coming in, I think the technology to build nice games on web is going to supersede or be on par with the technology of building a native game, running, native code. So when you get there as a developer, I'm like, okay, cool. Why should I even upload my game to the App Store? I can just,
you can bypass
bypass everything, have a link, if you will, to my game, and then share that link with people.
This is actually powered by cloud gaming.
Oh, cloud gaming is a whole different thing. So when I was at Dell Computers, we worked on architecture. I worked personal architect for a company back in the day who was actually building a complete cloud architecture. This was 2010. So from then they were thinking about this. And everything was built out. The problem back then was latency.
Expensive.
And expensive as well.
Yeah, definitely.
So there was a specific problem with running high GPU intensive games because back then, GPU side or NVIDIA, we weren't able to virtualize gaming sessions. So you can't have multiple games running on one single GPU back then. So because of this limitation, literally every person running a game had like a little GPU running at a data center for them. And we had to build these very interesting architecture of boxes that had over 16 GPUs in them. So it's like just infinity GPUs in them. And anyways, that model didn't work. So the cost issue, but more importantly, that was a solvable problem. It's the latency back then. You had to be literally sitting very close to a data center to stream a game, especially a first-person shooter game where, anything more than 100 milliseconds, I'm not sure what the number is, it's just unacceptable. So I think this will make a comeback for sure. And there was another NBA case about this stuff, but something about technology aside, something about owning a game feels good, right? You bought the game, you have the DVD, it's mine. It's always going back to this premium model.
Yeah, but how would web solve this?
Web won't. So web is very different, web is going to be a continuation, I think, of the free-to-play model, all these different things. It's just getting rid of the app store, reducing my funnel, having my own website, my own community. I control everything. I'm not now dependent on these larger stores. Even doing cross-platform becomes easier. I don't have to build a game twice.
Yeah, definitely.
Right? So I just see a lot of advantages from moving to web games than I see for app stores. Now, I don't know obviously they're thinking about this, the Apple and the Googles, they're thinking about this. I know Huawei has their app gallery as well. So I know they're thinking about this problem. And maybe the first thing we're going to see is a reduction in app store fees. Maybe not, I don't know, but let's see how they fix this. And I hope it's not through regulation. I hope it's not through like blocking websites. I mean, they're kind of doing that, right? They don't allow third-party payments. So I'm interested to see how that
for long,
Yeah.
Not for long.
Not for long.
Yeah.
So this is where I see the biggest shift happening. And obviously when that shift happens, everyone has to support that. Your engine developers, so Unity, Unreal, they now have to, focus on their web capabilities. So that's my guess for the industry. And yeah, in the next decade for sure.
For the next 5 years?
That's a tough one.
I've played around actually with some cloud gaming prototypes. They are essentially mobile games, but they're built it's like a 150 kilobyte game.
Yeah.
If you install on Android or even iOS.
Yeah.
And then you just play like the normal session. This is why I feel it's much closer than 10 years at least.
Yep.
In my opinion. I've seen this. I've played around with it. It's a link that you just click on and then you start playing.
Yep. I show you the name of the company. It's called OnLive. OnLive. We're one of the first to do this game streaming thing back in the day.
I'm talking about mobile now, not Call of Duty style.
Yeah.
It's simple mobile game. Not simple, but like mobile games. Instead of installing, you actually have to install from the stores. It depends. You can install from the store or you can install from a third party like you allow on iOS.
Yeah.
And then on Android you can just install it as an APK. But then it's a normal experience.
Interesting.
Yeah. Super interesting.
So we're getting rid of app stores.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
I'm glad you mentioned the App Store problem.
Yeah, so it's a technology problem, access problem, there's a funnel issue, and there's also user acquisition problem. Because right now for UA, I have to, especially when Apple removed, IDFA and tracking and all these different things, it's just making it like the value of the Apple Store to me is just diminishing. Now, maybe and I have to give that to them, maybe they're doing a level of checking to make sure that the content on the App Store is of some minimum level of quality, right? So when I'm downloading a game from the App Store, I know it at least works. When now it's like web and you can download anything, it could be a virus, could be whatnot. So it's an interesting challenge. They do have some value, but I don't think it's 30% of my company's revenue.
Yeah.
Value.
Also, I really doubt that the quality was the issue because, you rarely see a game that is not of quality on the App Store,
Exactly.
the Apple App Store, but it was mostly to drive IAP games in the top charts instead of driving, not like premium games instead of totally free games. And actually they achieved it today. So.
And that's the thing. So you're right. It was very interesting because you're right. Ease of access microtransactions were very simple on the App Store because you have your details in, you just double click, boom. But now the web is doing that.
Yep.
Right. Now you can, whether it's through Apple Pay.
Yeah, exactly.
Again, through Apple.
Ironically.
But paying online is now very as simple as a click now. It wasn't in the case back then. Right? You set up your, and I'm sure companies are coming and filling this gap with like fast payment methods and whatnot. And there's a few companies already working on this. So Xsolla, for example,
Yeah.
massive web infrastructure for payment systems.
Even Web3 wallets.